Hey, looks like we have bodies in the room, right? Um, just come here real quick, okay? So, my name is Sonia Plumb. I am choreographer and artistic director of Symphony. And here with me this evening is Vince Thomas. He is a professor at Trinity College, and we are doing a webinar and on Penelope's Odyssey. It's my project. It's this project, and I enlisted him for more information to share his knowledge with the relevancy of why mythology, why Homer's Odyssey is still relevant today, even after 3,000 years. And he and I have talked over this summer, and even after that, while we're all managing our way through COVID. How are we going to do this? We're going to do this. So he hasn't come to any in-person rehearsals, but I did send him video. So I want to say also thank you to Connecticut Humanities, who gave us the grant to be able to do this webinar. And we have another one coming up with Lauren Caldwell in December. She's a professor at UMass. So we'll talk about that later. Behind me, so I am in our official rehearsal studios, and these are 4 of my dancers, all masked. So yeah, so Mark is playing Poseidon, and Andy is playing Telemachus, who's my son, as in Penelope's son, and then Katie. So I'm going to have to whittle down who they are, but she's basically the maid, and she'll tell you more about that. Penelope has maids, and then Jessie is playing Athena. In a nutshell, I have taken what probably has a story that has about, I don't know, close to 200 characters, or not more, whittled it down to 8 primary characters. And my connection is unstable, great. And so 2 of the characters aren't here yet. This is what we're going to show you. So I think I'm going to let Vince speak for a bit, and then I'm going to show you 2 sections, work in progress, of what we have been working on in the studio. So go ahead, Vince. I'd love to hear something from you, and we have one more to come in. Right.
Well, yeah, thanks. I'll admit this person. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you, Sonia. Yeah, I'm sure we're all very excited for your project. I assume that's why people are here, have joined us. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to talk a bit about Homer's depiction of Penelope, who, as Sonia was telling us, is the wife of Odysseus. And I'm assuming people are roughly familiar with the story of the Odyssey. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how Penelope is portrayed by Homer in ancient Greek. And then I'm going to talk about a couple of modern media depictions. And my goal with doing this is to show you guys how in Homer's version, Penelope is somewhat equivalent to her husband, at least as far as ancient Greek society will allow. And then in the modern media depictions, of which the Sonia Plumb Company dance performance is a part, it kind of forms part of this continuum that we see in modern media, with Penelope being kind of an empowered woman. So I'm going to share with you guys the slideshow here. So I've entitled my part of our discussion tonight, The Many Faces of Penelope. And as Sonia said, I am an assistant professor of classical studies at Trinity College here in Hartford. I often teach Greek, so I actually have read the Odyssey in Greek, or at least theoretically I'm capable of it. I think we'll return to this image on the reverse of the slide. You see Penelope here and her son Telemachus. Sonia has cast those parts already. Sonia, you yourself are Penelope. And this is Penelope's loom behind it. So Penelope, as I mentioned, is the wife of Odysseus. She waits for him for about 20 years while he's at Troy and wandering. And we'll see that she comes up with a trick to deceive the men who are trying to get married to her, trying to get her to remarry. And it involves her using her loom. It involves her weaving a cloth. So this ancient Greek vase, I think, is pretty illustrative of her story. So as I said, we're going to start with Homer here. Homer's version of Penelope. Penelope was a traditional character. Homer didn't make her up. She was part of his received tradition in the same way that Sonia is receiving Homer's story. So as I said, Penelope was married to Odysseus, and they lived on the Greek island of Ithaca. They had a son named Telemachus. When Telemachus was still an infant, Odysseus was forced to join the Greek expedition to Troy. He didn't do this of his own free will. He was forced to do that. The war itself lasted 10 years, which is a really long time for a war. That may be a world record. And then Odysseus wandered for another 10 years after that. So this is 20 years that Odysseus is gone from Ithaca, doesn't see his wife Penelope. She has no news. There's nothing like, there are no phones, there are no text messages in the ancient world. So Penelope had no idea that this was going on. She didn't know whether Odysseus was alive or dead. So the first point that I want to make is that Homer depicts Penelope and Odysseus as an ideal couple. I even have on this slide an idealized couple, and we can talk a bit about that word. So as a reminder, we need to keep in mind that the union between Odysseus and Penelope is ideal from the point of view of Homeric culture and ancient Greek society, not necessarily ideal from our own culture's point of view. So I just wanted to make that point before we jump in here. The fact that Odysseus and Penelope are so well suited to one another is revealed in an exchange that Odysseus has with Nausicaa, who is a character from the Odyssey. I don't know if Sonia is going to include that character in her performance, but Nausicaa is a princess on the island of Phaeacia. So Odysseus meets this young girl in his wanderings. He hasn't seen Penelope yet, but he's trying to return to Ithaca at this point. So what you'll see on this slide is, well, first of all, this wonderful painting, and I have all the information about the paintings here below in the notes you can see on each slide. But what I've taken here is our passages, translations of the Odyssey into English. And Sonia and I were talking about this the other night. This is from the translation, the recent translation in 2019 of Emily Wilson. Emily Wilson, you may know, was the first woman to translate the Odyssey. The Odyssey had been translated many times into English, but Emily Wilson was the first woman to translate it. So it's interesting to think about how a woman's perspective might have shaped her translation. We can talk a bit about that. So this is the exchange between Nausicaa and Odysseus. This is Odysseus talking to Nausicaa, who does want to marry him. And he says, "For nothing could be better than when two live in one house, their minds in harmony, husband and wife. Their enemies are jealous, their friends delighted, and they have great honor." What I want to draw your attention to in this passage is the phrase that I have highlighted in blue, in a blue color, and the Greek word homophroneonte. So this is the Greek word that Wilson translates as their minds in harmony. So again, this is the idea is here is that Odysseus and Penelope have an ideal Greek union in that their minds kind of form together to create one better whole. So that it's a participle. The verb that Homer uses here literally means to share the same mind. Homer's Odysseus rejects a potential marriage with this eligible girl in Nausicaa on her Neverland island, with its copious wealth in favor of returning to Penelope. Nausicaa never proposes to Odysseus in the text that we have, and I suppose from the expectations of ancient Greek society, she wouldn't, but Odysseus also never proposes to her. And so we might think, oh, this is an ideal couple, this is a perfect union, but it's important again that we try to be as real as we can be here, meaning we think about how the ancient Greeks were thinking about this passage. So Odysseus does this as much because he loves Penelope, because he has a union with her, as for his own personal reputation. We have to remember that Phaeacia is an island, described as a Neverland. It's sort of this ideal paradise kind of place. And Odysseus would lose his reputation if he stayed on Phaeacia. So he leaves Phaeacia to return to Penelope, but also to his own reputation. On this next slide, we see Penelope's epithet. And this is something that students who are taking the class this semester where we read the Odyssey will be familiar with. So epithets are something that are used in oral poetry, something used by Homer sorry, I'm still admitting people from the weight room. The epithets are used by oral poets to create their performance. Each time they would create their performance anew. So these epithets are titles, basically adjectives that are used over and over again. In literate culture, we would think that epithets are kind of inelegant, but to the ancient Greeks, to the ancient Greek audience of Homer's poem, these would be seen as artful. So the Penelope's epithet that's used over and over again is periphron Penelopeia. This adjective means something like, or epithet means something like prudent. So prudent Penelope. It also can be translated as something like sensible, something that I'm sure you'll realize if you've taken a foreign language, is there's often many translations for one thing. Periphron is used 53 times total in the Odyssey. And this adjective is applied not only to Penelope, but also is used of other women, like the maidservant Eurycleia, Odysseus's older maidservant. However, it's important to note that periphron is used of Penelope in the majority of those instances. It's used 48 of the 53 times. And this adjective is only used once in the Iliad, in Homer's other poem, kind of prequel poem to the Odyssey. And in this, it describes a warrior's wife. So the point I'm making here is that periphron is very specific to Penelope. It's used of Penelope specifically. It's interesting when we compare this epithet of Penelope to an epithet that Odysseus gets, her husband gets. He gets the adjective polyphron, which means of many minds. So you can see how the second half, and I'm going to use my mouse here to indicate that the phron aspect here, the second part of the word, is the same in both instances. So again, Homer is encouraging us to think about Penelope and Odysseus as mirrors of one another, as parallels to one another, or at least he's encouraging that. I mentioned already that Penelope uses the weaving, her weaving of a shroud to trick her suitors, these young men from the surrounding islands that are trying to get Penelope to remarry. They all think that Odysseus is dead. You can see this very famous painting by Waterhouse on the left. And I'm going to read you this passage from book 19. So this is Penelope's own description of how she gets out of getting married to one of these suitors, how she stays faithful, in quotation marks, to Odysseus. The suitors want to push me into marriage, but I spin schemes. Some god first prompted me to set my weaving in the hall and work a long fine cloth. I said to all my suitors, although Odysseus is dead, postpone request for marriage till I finish weaving this sheet to shroud Laertes when he dies. My work should not be wasted, or the people in Argos will reproach me, if a man who won such wealth should lie without shroud. They acquiesced. By day I wove the web, and at night by torchlight I unwove it. I tricked them for 3 years. Long hours went by, and days and months, but then in the 4th year, with help from my own fickle dog-like slave girls, they came and caught me at it. Then they shouted in protest and made me finish it. So what's interesting in this instance is that Penelope uses the expectations of women in her own society against the men for almost 4 years. Women were expected to weave all the clothing, the textiles for the home. And so the ancient Greek audience would have been well aware of this, and that Penelope is using this. She's not cooking up a completely separate scheme. She's using her own identity against the males in her society. We get an additional insight into the same weaving trick episode that I mentioned by the description of it by the lead suitor, who's named Antinous. And you can see the fight between the suitors and Odysseus here in this ancient Greek base image on the right hand of the slide. So here's how Antinous describes the same weaving scheme. She is cunning. Antinous, of course, is talking about Penelope. It is the 3rd year, soon it will be 4, that she has cheated us of what we want. She offers hope to all, sends notes to each, but all the while her mind moves somewhere else. She came up with a special trick she fixed a mighty loom inside the palace hall. So I want to draw your attention again to the word I've highlighted there in blue, trick. The Greek word for this is dolon, and this word means trick. Odysseus, the same word, he uses the same word when he's again on this never, never island of the Phaeacians. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, known for my many clever tricks and lies. This word is doloisin in Greek. Okay, so obviously Odysseus uses the word dolos several times in the Odyssey. This is just the most memorable instance of it in Book 9 when Odysseus starts telling his own story. We need to keep in mind with all of this that it's not possible in Homeric society for Penelope to be a hero. And I'm putting hero in scare quotes in the sense that a man like Odysseus can become a hero. A man can become a hero. Odysseus' son Telemachus can become a hero, but Penelope, not so much. It's not even possible in her society, but as we've seen with Homer's depiction, he kind of goes to the utmost in making her a heroic type figure, at least a parallel to other heroes. Finally, before we turn to modern media representations of Penelope, I want to talk about another episode here. This is when Penelope suggests the axe contest. When Odysseus has returned home, well, she actually doesn't even know that he's home, but he's disguised himself as a beggar. This is what she tells Odysseus as a beggar. She doesn't know that this is her husband. She says here, I will arrange a contest with his axes. He would set them all in a row like ship's props. From a distance, he shot an arrow through all 12 of them. I will assign this contest to the suitors. Whoever strings his bow most readily and shoots through all 12 axes will win me, and I will follow him. I will be parted from here, this lovely house, my marriage home, so full of wealth and life, which I suppose I will remember even in my dreams. So again, Penelope says this, and you can see the modern statue on the right there that she's in fact holding Odysseus's bow. So I've highlighted here in blue the sentences that really show, I think, Penelope's agency. Notice that I will do this, I will do that. And again, you know, we could argue that she got the idea from Odysseus and so on and so forth, but we have to remember that at this point, Penelope has been waiting for Odysseus 20 years or almost 20 years, and she doesn't know that he's still alive. So people argue all the time about this passage, whether Penelope in fact does know or suspects anyway that this beggar in front of her is Odysseus. And that's very much an open question. Homer never tells us. It seems convenient that she arranges this contest that only Odysseus can win. And maybe she does that because she knows. Another thing about this axe contest is that Athena, the goddess, is prevalent throughout the Odyssey. Penelope is a bit like Athena in this episode in the sense that she is a guiding force. Without her, Odysseus might have never defeated the suitors, without his bow and without this contest. So we should keep that in mind. So now I just want to look at a couple of representations of Penelope in modern media. And Sonia, you can interrupt me if you need to want to show scenes from your stuff, but this is the second half. So as long as I don't see you waving frantically, I will assume that I can keep going. So yeah, so the first one I want to look at here is a film that came out in 1953 in Italy and then 1954 in the United States. So this is a joint Italian and American production that was directed by Mario Camerini and Mario Brava. And I mentioned this film, you might be familiar with it because as you can see in the image on the right-hand side, Kirk Douglas, a very young Kirk Douglas, plays, his name is Ulysses. Odysseus' name is, this is the Roman version of his name. So when the Romans got their hands on this story, they made the characters' names more familiar in their own language. So that's why he's called Ulysses in this film. So Kirk Douglas, and then on the left-hand image here, you see, I'm forgetting his name, like off the top of my head, Zorba the Greek, that guy, why can't I remember his name? Anyway, another very famous American actor. So what I want to do is watch a couple of scenes from this film, and I want us to be thinking about how Penelope is empowered in these scenes. So what we're going to watch is what we're going to watch are scenes that do not appear in the Odyssey at all. Right? These are invented scenes that modern media creators are doing, much like Sonia is doing right now with the dance. What we're going to see are completely invented scenes, and this, in fact, as we'll see, allows Penelope to empower Penelope in ways that Homer did not. Sonia, are we still okay on time? Yeah. Okay. Let me mute myself, and then I'm going to show you guys this clip.
We loved far away across the sea. He spoke of this house and of this very room where you'd be waiting for him.
For too many years I have waited. At first there was only the news of the war, and the war went on for months. Slowly the months became years, and I spent the years asking myself, where is he now? Is he with his soldiers? Maybe there are other women there too. Beautiful women full of life. Maybe he has forgotten me. But Penelope remains faithful. It is so easy for Penelope to remain faithful. And then one fine day comes the news that the war is finished. Everyone is happy. All the others return to their homes. The kings and the soldiers. But he, no. He alone among them all. And once again begins the waiting. Again the months. Again the years. And the years are made of thousands of hours. Of days. Of nights. The night. And you lie there alone in your empty bed. And wait.
All right. So what we saw in that scene is this: the director is giving voice. The directors are giving voice to Penelope's interiority. We hear a lot about her waiting for Odysseus to come home. We hear a bit of that in we hear a bit about that in the Odyssey in Homer's poem, but we don't hear Penelope talking at length about what her experience was like waiting for Odysseus to come home. So I'm going to show you another clip from that same film, and this is going to have the witch Circe that Odysseus meets in his travels, and she's actually played by the same actress. Her name is Silvia Mangano. So Penelope and Circe are played by the same woman, and so it's interesting to think about why that might be. I should mention that I actually got this idea from a book chapter by classical studies scholar Joanna Paul. So this isn't an original idea on my part, but let me show you guys that clip.
Eurelicus! 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 Flighties! Flighties!
They're gone, Ulysses.
Who are you?
Circe.
Circe the witch.
That's such an ugly word. Why not goddess?
Was it you who pulled the ship off her course?
I was lonely.
What do you want with me?
To help you. To load your ship with riches of all kinds. To give you a favorable wind to lead you home.
Why should you want to do that for me?
It has been many years now that men have been landing on my island. Men famous for their bravery and for their heroic deeds. And each time I was left more lonely than before. But ever since the winds first brought your name to me, and Echo repeated your deeds, I have been waiting for your ship, Ulysses. And for the first time, Echo and the winds have not lied. What is it?
Strange. Same proud face. Same dark eyes as Penelope. Strange.
Why is it strange? Isn't the difference between one woman and another only in the mind of a man?
No. The difference is Penelope would never let a stranger take her in his arms.
Not even a stranger like Ulysses?
Okay, so Sonia, did you want to show them the dance now?
I do. I was just going, oh my gosh, that's so dramatic. And yeah, so yeah, my dancers are itching to move. And it's I'm very curious, and I want to talk about it now, but you know, one of the reasons I fell in love with the Odyssey actually was the poetry. And especially rereading it with Emily Wilson's it's just interesting to hear how the movie interprets it. So the first section we're going to show, and I do want to say, you know, this is work in progress, and we've been rehearsing Catch As Catch Can during this time. So I am going to first dance with Telemachus. Andy's my son. He's coming of age. And there he is. So right now, the red chair is his throne. I am doing a contemporary take on it. It's not going to be set in ancient Greece. And I'm going with the fact that this is a timeless tale. So I'm going to switch screens so that you are seeing us big. And I have to press go and all that good business. But myself, and I think I'm okay. Yeah, but I'll let you can stand here to Okay, so I don't know if now's Vince, if you want to keep talking while my dancers catch the breath, and then I know in a bit we have one more section to show with all 4 dancers. So I didn't say questions for Laura. Does that make sense? I think.
Yeah, but by the way, I should say I'm going to show a clip from something else here, but we should say that we're going to do a portion of question and answer, but people are going to have to use the chat if they have a question. So just don't ask them now, but when we call for that, people will put their questions in the chat. So yeah, that was great, Sonia. Thank you. Yeah, that was really interesting in terms of the clips that I just showed. So as I mentioned, the same actress in that film, the 1954 film, plays Penelope and Circe, and they comment about that in the film. It seems like we saw that exchange between Ulysses and Circe, where they both acknowledge that Circe looks like Penelope, and this is never said in Homer's Odyssey. Many people have argued this. But we don't see it. So this is the point I was making about modern media, that they tend to show us things that are only implicit in the text. So the next film that I want to look at is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? From 2000. This was directed by the Coen brothers. It starred George Clooney as Ulysses Everett McGill. You can see him on the left side of the image here. And the person I really want us to pay attention to is his wife, who's renamed not Penelope, but Penny. She's played by Holly Hunter. So the setting, like Sonia was telling us, with the setting for her dance is changed. It's not in the ancient world anymore, ancient Greece. It's in Depression era Mississippi. Instead of being a famous hero, Ulysses, who again is George Clooney's character, actually Ulysses is his middle name. It's not even his first name. Ulysses and his companions are con men in this film who escape from a chain gang in the first scene of the film. So already you can tell that this is quite different from Homer's version. And I should emphasize again that it's Homer's version. It's just a version. He received a tradition. Homer didn't make any of this stuff up. He probably added his own kind of spin on things, just like these modern media artists do, and just like Sonia is doing. But largely it was tradition that was received. So in the clip that we're going to watch, Ulysses has been in prison for years at this point, and as you'll see, Penelope thinks that he's dead and is already making plans to remarry. So we're going to watch that clip now.
Hello, sugar. Huh? How's my little girl? Who the hell's that?
Starla Warby.
Starla McGill, you mean? How come you never told me about her?
You was hit by a train.
That's another thing. Why are you telling our gals I was hit by a train?
Lots of respectable people been hit by trains. Judge Hobby over in Cookville was hit by a train. What was I supposed to tell him? That you were sent to the penal farm and I divorced you from Shane?
I take your point, but it does put me in a damn awkward position vis-a-vis my progeny.
Hello, Penny. This gentleman bothering you?
You Waldrop?
Uh-huh, that's right.
You've been using my hair treatment.
Your hair treatment?
Excuse me. I got news for you, in case you hadn't noticed. I wasn't hit by a train. And I have traveled many a weary mile to be back with my wife and my 6 daughters.
7, Daddy. That ain't your daddy, Alvinell. Your daddy was hit by a train.
Now, Penny, you stop that.
No, you stop it. Vernon here's got a job. Vernon's got prospects. He's bona fide. What are you?
I'll tell you what I am. I'm the paterfamilias, and you can't marry him.
I can, I am, and I will. Tomorrow. I gotta think about the little Warvey gals. They look to me for answers. Vernon can support them and buy them lessons on the clarinet. The only good thing you ever did for the gals was to get hit by that train.
Well, you lying, unconstant succubus.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! You can't swear at my fiancée.
Oh, yeah? Well, you can't marry my wife. Who is that man?
He's not my husband. Just a drifter, I guess. Just some no-account drifter.
And stay out of the Woolworth.
So in that scene, we see an exact reversal of Odysseus's character, especially at the end where Penelope or Penny says, I don't even know his name. It doesn't matter who he is. He's just a drifter. And so maybe this is what Homer's Penelope might have been thinking, but she chose to keep it to herself. Sonia, did you want to do another scene? I have another couple of clips to show, but if you want to do the dance now, you can just go like this if when you're ready. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so another scene from O Brother, Where Art Thou that I want us to look at is the very end scene of the film where Odysseus, rather Ulysses, returns Penny's ring to her, but she's not satisfied with the ring. So again, we're seeing a very empowered woman who's in charge of her own destiny, as opposed to the Odyssey where we could say, well, Penelope waited around for 20 years, even though Homer showed allowed modern artists these little cracks to insert their own stories. Still, he didn't exactly present her as empowered, but let's look at the final scene of the film, O Brother, Where Art Thou?
All's well that ends well, so the poet says.
That's right, honey.
I don't mind telling you, I'm awful pleased. My adventuring days have come to an end. Time for this old boy to enjoy some repose.
That's good, honey.
You were right about that ring, too. Any other wedding band wouldn't do. This here was foreordained. Fate was smiling on me. You just have to have confidence.
That's not my ring.
God, what?
That's not my ring.
Not your ring.
That's one of Aunt Herlene's.
You said it was in the roll-top desk.
I said I thought it was in the roll-top desk.
No, you said...
Or under the mattress, or
no.
maybe my shiffer robe. I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry, honey.
Well, we need that ring.
Well, that ring is at the bottom of a pretty darn big lake. A 9,000-hectare lake.
I don't care if it's 90,000.
But, honey...
That lake was not my doing.
Well, of course not, honey.
I counted to 3, honey.
No, wait, honey. Finding one little ring in the middle of all that water, one hell of a heroic task.
And gives me this.
Okay, so in that clip, which was, again, the end of the film, we see that Ulysses says that his adventuring days are over, by which he means that he'll stop being a con man. I don't think we're exactly supposed to believe him, and perhaps Penny doesn't believe him either. She demands that Ulysses find a particular ring, not the one that he discovered in his travels, to which Ulysses replies, finding one little ring in the middle of all that water is one hell of a heroic task. And we as the audience are led to think that Ulysses is not up to it. So again, this is not the Odysseus from Homer's poem, the masculine hero who does any task that's set before him, and we see a very empowered Penelope or Penny in this case. Sonia, now do you want to?
Yeah, I haven't quite figured out how to wave. So I'm going to change. I know. I'm going to change over. So this section that we're going to show you now Poseidon and Athena. So Poseidon is Earthshaker, god of drought, floods, and he has a bit of anger management issues. Athena is his sister. She is strong and wise and calm, cool, and collected. She can also, she guides people. The other two characters are Telemachus, and then the Katie is playing the slave that embodies giving Penelope away. So that's just a gist of what we're going to show, and then you can ask questions later.
One thing, Sonia, that you probably shouldn't mute yourself because we couldn't hear the audio in the last time. I don't know if you meant to do that.
Right, I knew that.
Okay.
All right, that's a summer. Here you go.
Nobody's gonna if I did, my soul be lost. Nobody's gonna nobody's gonna nobody's gonna my way. If I did, my soul be lost. Nobody's gonna nobody's gonna my way. If I did, my soul be lost. Nobody's gonna nobody's gonna nobody's gonna Mama, tell me how to sing where if I die, my soul be lost. Mama, tell me how to sing. Mama, tell me how to fly. Mama, tell me how to fly away. If I die, my soul be lost. Mama, tell me how to fly. Nobody's gonna nobody's gonna where. My soul be lost. Nobody's gonna Mama taught me how to pray. Well, if I die, my soul be lost. Mama
I couldn't get it to pause. No, yeah. All right, so there you go. They're breathing. Thomas, do you want to talk a tad and then leave a few minutes for a Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. I can show them the one last modern media version of Penelope that that I wanted to talk about. And this is from, I think this is actually a good note to end on. This is from an episode of the satire cartoon The Simpsons. So this is from an episode that aired in 2000. It's called Tales from the Public Domain. So they did their own take on the Odyssey, which I guess was inevitable given that their main character's name is Homer Simpson. So I wanted to watch actually a couple of very short clips. These are much shorter than the movie clips that we watched. In the first one that we're going to watch, Marge, who is playing Penelope in this version, reminisces about her husband Odysseus. And again, what I want us to pay attention to is how the traditional narrative that we get from Homer is undercut here in favor of female empowerment.
It's been so many years since I've seen your father. I hope he's still the magnificent physical specimen he was when he left.
Mom, maybe it's time to choose a suitor.
Discus Stew has ouzo for tuzo.
I'll leave you guys alone.
Discus Stew was talking to you.
Oh, where could your father be? Oh.
Okay, so notice there how Penelope, as Marge, remarks on how she hopes that her husband Odysseus is still this magnificent physical specimen, and the next scene we'll see that he's not that magnificent physical specimen any longer. So let's just watch a little bit further into the episode here.
Been 20 years, and you suitors have been very patient.
We've been beyond patient.
When we came here, Helen of Troy was hot. Now look at her.
This is the face that launched 1,000 ships. The other way.
Honey, I'm home.
Look who the fates dragged in.
Oh, I'm sorry I was gone so long, but I'm gonna do something I haven't done for 20 years. Take out the trash. Sweet Penelope, you're just as beautiful as you were when I left.
Oh, I can't stay mad at you.
Oh.
Brave Odysseus, it's been 20 long years. Regale me with tales of your adventures.
Quit suffocating me. I'm going to Moe's. Eesh.
So that's the end of that episode. Moe's is a bar, so that Homer Simpson frequents. So instead of being excited that he's seeing his wife after 20 years, he just wants to go to the bar and drink. And obviously he's not the same physical specimen that Penelope was talking about in the photo of him from 20 years ago. And we hear the triumphant horn swelling when Odysseus, who has lost all his hair and has gained some weight, is ready to face the suitors. So those are just 3 examples of modern media where Penelope is portrayed, and I think these are in the same vein as what Sonia is doing with her dances, thinking about how these characters fit into a more modern mindset, perhaps. Sonia, I don't know if you want to open it up for questions now. Should we do that? So if you have questions for Sonia or for me, put them in the chat, please, and Sonia or I will try to read them out and then address them.
Or the dancers as well. I think they're going to have even a more interesting things to say now that they've been in rehearsal with me for a while. So if I'm looking for questions, but if we don't see any, I might even just have them talk for a bit, or at least a little bit about.
Yeah,
Right.
someone
Stuff
complimented you, Sonia, on your work. When, by the way, can we expect to see this performance? Do you have any dates yet about when the whole thing is going to come together?
So we're attempting to have it come together by actually the end of January. Just kind of taking in consideration what's going on with COVID and the timelines that we need to be able to do this. The plan is that we will live stream it, but also have it for, kind of pay per view. And then should the fates and gods and goddesses allow, we're hoping we can have in person, at least limited in person as well. So yeah, end of January is the plan.
There's a question here, Sonia, asking for you to review who played which role. So maybe you can have the dancers come up to the screen and introduce themselves again.
Yes. So, yeah, go for it.
Hello, my name is Mark, and I play the role of Poseidon.
I see. You want to say a little bit of
about my character? Well, my character, I studied some Greek mythology back in college, so being able to come back to this process and kind of revisit the stories is great. So I'm trying to get myself back into understanding everybody's characters and their dynamics. But Poseidon is right now, he's a really tempered man, loses his temper easily, but also can be possessive, that kind of male bravado of, claiming his dominance and whatnot. But then also, especially in this iteration, I'm playing with and exploring my relationship with the other characters. So it'd be interesting to hear from more of you, kind of what you dynamics that's kind of coming through the screen. But yes, we're still in kind of an exploration process, but it's just fun to kind of play this kind of wild character.
Cool, thank you. All right, next up, Katie. I mean, we'll just go down the line. So maybe just say who you are, and then if they have questions after, it'd be great. I think is the best way.
Hi, I'm Katie. Thank you guys for being here today, and we hope you like the little snippets that we showed today. I play the role of the maid, and we've been playing around with improv and creating some phrases at work. And in our improv, I kind of noticed that I was more observing the group and just thinking of a maid in general. They're normally like set apart and they kind of know all the secrets of the house. They know where everything goes. And kind of a secret power that I feel like I have. Like I know things and I use that.
And she does.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't know. I can't tell if there's any question. I mean, if you see a question for yourself, go ahead. Not yet. Yeah. So we'll just go through all the characters and then read off the questions. So, all right. So, Telemachus.
Hey everyone, my name is Andy. I play Telemachus. I've been working with Sonia. Right now, I'm also in the exploration process of figuring out what my character is and how I apply it to myself, especially because this is a contemporary adaptation of the story. And where I'm working on building my relationship with Sonia mostly because she's my mother, so we've been working a lot about what that means and what my relationship, specifically in the throne, the future would look like. And there's a lot of give and take in my character, I feel like. It's like this boy who's evolving into this character soon is supposed to take over, but is a little bit hesitant as well. So that's but also full of energy. So that's my character. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jessie, and I play Athena. It's been really fun playing Athena because I am quite a bit of a feminist myself, so it's cool to be in this like female power role. As Athena, I kind of guide and teach the other characters through their journey, kind of pull them out of their distress. And it's been fun to do that with Poseidon as well, because we are brother and sister, and I get to be the one that calms him down, but then also knows when it's the right time to fight back and assert myself against him. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yay, nicely said. Great.
That was great to hear from all the dancers. And I see a question here: did the dancers need to wear masks while they are dancing when you open the piece?
Okay. So we're in rehearsal process. When we show it, the protocol, and I've done a lot of study and worked with the state and all of that, so that the dancers are allowed to perform without masks. We have to be certain distance from the audience. We did that all summer. Right now in rehearsal, and we wanted to, it's COVID time. We, depending on who I'm working with in the situation, they're wearing masks. They're wearing masks most of the time, but interestingly enough, we're kind of working in what might be called a pod mode, or at least we are all practicing such the social distancing, wearing masks when we're out, hardly going anywhere. Well, at least I can speak for myself. So we really do feel safe with each other and trusting each other. Dancers, there's very few jobs around right now, so nobody wants to get sick. And they have really been honoring that. So that is the answer. When it is performed, we will not be in masks.
Another question for you here, Sonia. How did you decide which parts of the story are emotive or pivotal enough to choreograph? What went into that decision process?
Okay. So I've been obsessed with the Odyssey for years. And when I did it in 2015, I focused on the character of Odysseus and his wanderings, because I just thought that was so cool. Going there. So when it gnawed at my brain again, I was like, why? And then I realized it was about the women, and it started in about 2018, 2019. I was like, I need to do this again. And so I really went down and explored the path of the women. So it's a lot about Penelope's journey. I paid a lot more attention to that text. I really had to reread it. Her relationship with her son, my own son's coming of age, and that, what is it to be a mother, to have a son who's ready to take the throne, to have to work in the laws of the land, no matter, in its culture and law. And, as I went down that path, it was just like, well, that's still relevant today. So, when I whittled down the characters, I really wanted to look at who acting with, why she was interacting with them, how that could change, what I wanted to say. And then, of course, Odysseus does come home. What is, all that evolution and mind stuff. So I know that's a bit rambling, but I could go on for a long time, and I don't want to hold you up too much right now, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's mostly the women's story.
It's related to that, Sonia. Are there more characters than introduced themselves to us just now?
Two, Odysseus, and so Katie's playing more of the slave girl, and I think no, I can't remember what her name is. They're Greek names. So I kind of. And then the other woman is playing the servant. So, and then I've kind of consolidated. So, and JoJo's not here. He's the suitor. So in the story, there's 100 names. I can't afford to do that. So I just can't. JoJo's the main Antinous suitor, but he represents, what the suitor in that relationship. Then as far as the maids go, and I wanted an even cast of 4 women, 4 men. So Katie, there were slave girls and maids that were more treacherous, that they did deceive the queen, and in the original story, they do get they have to clean up the dead suitors, and then they're hung. Yeah. So in my version, and we haven't figured this out yet, right? But there's another way than killing everybody, right, Athena? And so the other woman, who will be more of the, the maid, she's exploring herself and what it is to be a woman in any culture, and have to leave. You're looking for yourself if there's a woman in power, right? It's just a natural thing. And then Athena is very much. She's also a counselor. So in the Odyssey, there's the older one. There's the old. You said her name. She's the nursemaid. I mean, and she's the confidant. Yeah. And what's great about Athena is she's mentor. She's a chameleon. So she appears to the mortals as somebody else, and they don't know she's a goddess until she flies off, right? So there's this secret. And we all have counselors. We all have guidance, no matter what age we're going through. So that's how I whittled it down. And I haven't decided. I'm on the fence of if the Mark who's playing Poseidon will also present, kind of another layer of men. So it's really, men and women in the conversation is where we're going, not talking. Okay. Anything else? No. It's all yours, Mr. Vince.
That looks like all the comments. So thank you everyone for coming. We'd like to thank the Connecticut Humanities as well as the Wadsworth for doing the social media for this, getting the word out. We appreciate that. And of course, we want to thank the dancers, as everyone did in the comments and in the virtual clapping. You guys did great. We really appreciated that, especially in this very difficult time. It's difficult for you guys, and I'm sure it's difficult for people viewing at home to see what's going on and to hear the music, but I think it all worked out really well. So thank you everyone for coming. Really appreciate it.
Follow us, all the dancers. We're building it piece by piece, and yeah, just keep tabs. Thank you very, very much. There we go. Good. Just gonna mute myself.